ahead and get started. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started here with our little workshop here. So I just want to thank you guys for attending our Retirement 101, which we're gonna go through the Florida retirement system and its different plans, and also the voluntary retirement savings plans that the district offers for you here. I just want to let you know that we are going to record this one for future purposes. And if you have any questions about stuff, you can utilize the chat feature. We're going to answer questions at the end. And also that when we're done, if you'd like to have a copy of the presentation, we'll give you an email address that you can put it in there, and we can send one out to you through the inner office. Is there anything on the chat you look at?
No, just was making sure.
Oh, okay. All right. So, sorry, the glare is all weird on this thing. There it is. All right. So first, a little quick introductions here. I'm Jarrett Curtis. I'm the compliance analyst here at the school district. We have helping us here, Lynn Peterson, our supervisor of risk management, and you'll see the list of the other folks in our department that takes care of our different plans for benefits, along with our on-site Florida Blue rep. So if you happen to have any questions about benefits that you have in the district, whether it be the retirement stuff, medical, dental, vision, things like that, you can reach out to us here and we can assist you with any kind of questions you have. First thing you get to see here is our little legal disclaimer that says that everything we tell you here is just informational purposes. We're not giving you financial advice. We're just giving you ideas of things to think about when you're looking at your retirement and different types of retirement plans available to you, so that you can consult with a licensed financial advisor and be informed of what you have to talk to them about. So what we're going to talk about today is going to be, again, the Florida retirement system is two different plans, which is the pension plan and the investment plan, along with the drop program that is with the pension plan. We're also going to talk about how retirement affects your sick time that you may have, vacation time, and accrued comp times. We're also going to show you a good example of how the calculation for an FRS benefit happens. And then we'll move into talking about our voluntary retirement plans that we have in the district for you, the 401ks, 403bs, and 457 type plans. So what we're going to start off with here is contributions. So with the Florida retirement system, as it sits right now, you as an employee do contribute to the Florida retirement system. It is 3% of your pay. It happens automatically. You don't have a choice in it. What you can do is, if you want to save more for retirement, that's where we get the voluntary type plans. But what comes from you is 3%. Payroll takes care of that part and sends it to the state as funds. Now the district does put some funds in there for you as well. Those amounts vary depending on legislation for each year. So the minimum is basically a 3%, of course, for yourself. And then there's some additional fees that the FRS charges the district that they put on your behalf as well. If you want to see how much that amount's actually going to be, you can go to the Florida Retirement System website, myfrs.com, and you can actually see a part where it shows what the contributions are for each different class. We're a regular class and we have special risk for the district here. So with the Florida Retirement System, there are two different plans, as I alluded to earlier. There is the pension plan, which is the defined benefit, which includes drop. That is the plan in which they give you a monthly benefit payable for your whole life. And then afterwards, it depends on what option you pick on how they differ. And we'll get to those in just a moment. The other plan is the investment plan, which is what they call a self-administered plan. That one functions more like a 401k. So what happens is that whatever the funds go into the account, you have to pick on how you want to invest them with the FRS. So if you wanted to see what those types of funds they have, if you go to that website, the myfrs.com, there'll be a spot that says investment plan, and then you'll be able to see the different funds they have offered that you can move into if you have that plan. They have target date funds, which they use, which is real popular, which basically has a plan that has a different mix of stocks and bonds. And what it does is that it has a target date associated with it. So as it closer to that target date, it'll automatically reallocate from an aggressive type of investment to a conservative, so that you don't have to really worry about that part. But it does more what they call set and forget. You pick that, and as you get closer to that time frame, it will reallocate itself for it all by itself. But they do have different plans, funds that you can use in there. that have anything from very conservative things that really don't make a whole lot of anything, and they have real aggressive things that can be really lucrative, but at the same time, uh, very costly as well. So it depends on what your risk tolerance is. Each one of the plans has a perspective to it that'll tell you how they've been performing since they started and what they've done last couple of months and what have you, plus what the risk tolerance is for it. Now, if you want to talk with a financial planner, FRS does provide those as part of the plan. You can go to the myfrs.com website, and they do have a little chat that pops up on there. You can talk with them that way, or you can give them a call up at that 866 number there, and you can talk with them. Most of the time, their hours is pretty much 8 to 8 every day, except for holidays that you can get on there. Usually, the better times of day to get in touch with them is going to be later on in the day, like now. If you do it first thing in the morning, everyone else does that. If you do it at lunchtime, everyone else does that too. So best time to reach them is going to be after work time frames, to be able to get. Otherwise, you may have longer than average wait times, as they would say. So they also support different languages. So if you have a different language that you prefer to, you can when you call them up, it'll ask you what you want to do, or on their website, you can translate it into a different language. All right, so let's talk about service time. So with the FRS, every month that you work in, you get service time for it. And every paycheck you get salary credit. So service time and salary in the plan will follow you if you happen to change FRS employers. So if you end up being, let's say if you start out with Sarasota County and then you end up leaving and going to Manatee County or Charlotte County, they are part of the Florida retirement system. Your time with FRS will just follow you over there. There's not a break in things that happen. So anytime you've accrued with us would still be on their book there, accruing with them. You don't start over again if you happen to move employers that are within the FRS system. For people that have leave of absences that happen during their careers, the FRS does allow for you to purchase that time back. So if you were out for military leave, maternity leave, or just a professional type of leave, and you are gone, or let's say you're going to a charter school leave, and you're out there and you return back, you can purchase that time back to that you were out with FRS. They do have limitations on them. 2 years for leave of absence, 5 years for out of state credit, or time for a non-participating employer. So let's say if you were from Georgia and you came to Sarasota and you started working with us, and you had 10 years there, you could purchase that 5 years back with FRS to have extra 5 years here. The only downside is that you can't vest by purchasing time. So if you are not to a vesting requirement yet, which we'll talk about later on, you can't purchase time to make yourself vested. So you can purchase time to give you extra time in the calculation, but not the vest on it. Between the two plans that FRS offers, they do allow you to make a change between the two one other time. So when you first start working with an FRS employer, you make what's called your initial election, which would be either that pension or an investment plan. But anytime during your career, you can go ahead and change over to the other plan if you want to. But the caveat is that you can't vest by changing plans either. So if you're in one plan that has a vesting period and you go to another one that has a less vesting period, you're still subject to that original vesting period with that plan for the time that was in that plan. And it'll make more sense when I get to the vesting slides here. The employee contributions, so that 3% that you put in FRS, those are always yours. So if you happen to leave an FRS employer prior to vesting, you can always request the funds that you put into the account back to yourself if you want. And again, they all do offer the free financial guidance line with FRS. So you give them a call if you have questions about your particular things. You can always contact them. And if you want to review things that you have, any other kind of funds, they do that. It's part of the plan. It's not something you have to pay for. They are not commission based anything. They don't sell any kind of products. They only give you advice on what you have and tell you what you can do with what you have, but they don't actually do that part for you. So they can't go out and say, oh, you go ahead and buy 500 shares of Microsoft. They can't do that part. They can tell you to purchase something in a large cap type of company like Microsoft, but it'd be up to you to actually make that part happen outside of them, as opposed to if they have a fund, which they call a target date fund of 2037 target fund date, you can say, well, if you go to the 2027 fund date, then that'll take care of what you need to do, but you'd have to actually execute it though with them. All right. So Same more stuff with FRS. So new employees with FRS will have an 8-month window to choose their plan. So people that were hired prior to 2011 already went into a plan, but these are for new employees that come in. They have a window in which they have to choose that plan. So when you're hired, the FRS gets reported salary from the district. So at the beginning of the following month, so like right now, we're going to have payroll run for 4/30. That already happened. So the first week of May, we're going to report those April earnings over to them. Once that happens for someone who is a new employee, FRS will then send out a packet to them and says, hey, you got to make a choice. We want you to choose between one of the plans for you that we have offered here. If you don't make a choice within that 8-month time frame, they will default you over to the investment plan. Now, when they send out the packet to you, they're going to give you a bunch of papers inside to tell you about the different plans and how they work. They're also going to give you a link to this website, this choosemyfrsplan.com. And what it is a little questionnaire that'll ask you certain things, and based on how you answer it, they're going to recommend a plan based on how you answer stuff. Okay. But if you want some more in detail stuff about those, about picking your plan, of course, you can always contact FRS as well, and they can go through the different plans and, for your scenario, and they would recommend one that you can take for it. All right. So now, first plan we're going to go through here is going to be the pension plan. So first and foremost, the vesting requirements for that pension plan. So participants prior to 2011 has a 6-year vesting period. If you're in this special risk class, which is our SROs, they have a 55 and 6 years or 25 years of service. So everyone else that what they call regular class, those are going to be our classified, our instructional, and our admin type of positions. So the only special risk that we have here is our SROs currently. Now, if you were a participant after 2011, the vesting requirement changes to 8 years. So what that would mean is that you have to have 8 years of service with the Florida retirement system before you're eligible for a benefit. So once you are vested, that means that the funds that you put in the FRS, that 3% plus the funds that the district has put in, is now yours in the fund itself. So and you're eligible for a benefit at some point in time. Of course, our special risk people for that after 2011 is going to be the age 60 or the with 8 years of service or 30 years of service altogether. Now, the FRS also has, on top of the vesting period, they have a normal retirement age. So the 6-year vesting period has a normal age of 62 or 30 years of service, and the 8-year vesting has the 65 or 33 years of service, and it's whichever comes first on there. So you can be 57 and have 30 years of service. You're under the normal retirement at that point. So what that means is that with the Florida retirement system, once you are vested and eligible for a benefit, you could apply for a benefit. But if you are under those age minimums right there, then the FRS is going to do a reduction to your benefit. It's 5% for each year you are under one of those. So if it's under 6-year vesting and you're 60 and you want to retire, you can do so, but they're going to take 10% off the calculation for that. And if you're under the 8-year vesting and you're 63 and want to retire, you can do so, but again, they're going to take 10% off of the calculation for that. So what they're doing is that because they have to figure they're going to pay you a longer period of time. So if you think of it like a mortgage, so the longer period of time, the less amount you pay, same concept as the other way around. So they're going to pay you an amount for a longer period of time. So in doing so, to make the fund last, they're going to spread out the payments and make them less. All right, so moving on with the pension plan, there are 4 different options for them to choose from. They each have a lifetime benefit for the participant, and depending on after your passing is how the benefits differ between the two. So the first one you're going to see on there is option 1. This is the one that gives you usually the most amount of benefit for your pension, but it is a lifetime benefit for just yourself, and that's it. There is no continuation to a beneficiary. However, you do still put a beneficiary on the account. So because we were talking about earlier when I was saying that you put that 3% into FRS. So if for some reason you would pass away before you've collected that 3% total back, the balance would go to a beneficiary. So let's just say if you retired, you put $20,000 of your own money in FRS, you've retired, and after you've collected $10,000, you've passed away, your beneficiary would then get $10,000, and that'd be it. But once you've already collected all of your funds that you put in this account and you pass away, the benefit would just stop at that point. So that's what option 1 does for you. The second option, option 2, is what they refer to as the 10-year guarantee. So what it's telling us is that the pension will pay for a minimum amount of time, still your lifetime, but if your lifetime happens to not meet that minimum, it will continue to pay to your beneficiary for the remainder of that period. So if you live 8 years and pass away, the beneficiary will continue to get the benefit for 2 more years, and then it would stop. If you live beyond that time frame, if you live 25 more years and pass away, it's just going to stop at that point because the plan has already fulfilled its 10-year obligation for you. Normally, if you do option 2, you're looking between about 3 to 5% reduction, depending on age, when you join the plan. Your third option is usually what's called a reduced benefit for you and a joint annuitant. Most of your joint annuitants are going to be spouses. There are options for some other folks. There's a hierarchy that FRS uses, but it starts with spouse and it usually goes down to disabled children and children from there. But most people just go with the spouse part on there because you can't just skip over one. It's going to be the next person on there. So you can't just skip a spouse to do another. In most scenarios, of course, some with disabled children you can do, but most of the time you're looking at yourself and your spouse in this point. So the calculation is actually based on the age difference between the two of you. So if you have a spouse that is a lot younger than you, the reduction is going to be greater because FRS is going to be figuring that they're going to be paying that person the lifetime benefit more so than yourself. So what happens is that the benefit that gets calculated is the payable amount for as long as one of you is alive. Once you have both passed away, then the benefit would then stop. So if it's you and a spouse, your spouse passes away, you still get your pension. Once you pass, it stops. The other side is still true as well. If it's yourself that passes away first, your spouse will continue to get that benefit until they pass away, and then it would stop at that point. Like I said, it's hard to calculate how much the reduction is because it's all based on age difference between you and the joint annuitant on there. The last one is option 4. This one does the same concept as option 3, that it has a continuation to a joint annuitant. The difference is that the reduction usually is not quite as much as option 3. It's usually, sometimes it can be greater than option 1, but it depends on that age difference that we're talking about. So what happens though is that the greater amount is payable to you, the retiree, for as long as you and your joint annuitant are alive. And as soon as one of you passes away, the survivor then gets a 1/3 reduction, and that's what they collect for the rest of their life. So if it's you and let's say it's your spouse and your spouse passes away, your amount that you were collecting, it was now going to get reduced by 1/3. And then the flip side is that if it's you that passes away first and your spouse is that joint annuitant, then they will continue the benefit, but it's going to have that 1/3 reduction as well. So it's one of those things that when the meeting would happen with one of us here at the district, and we would go through that and say, does it make sense for you to pick one or the other? And if you have a feeling that maybe one feels better for you or not, we're going to try to give you the pros and cons of what that is. So you may be gaining a couple $100 to lose 1,000 later on. So it's one of those things that you just have to kind of get the big picture of what might work best in your scenario. So that's the only thing that one of the big things that people always ask is, what does everyone else do? Well, it doesn't really matter because it's what's your favorite color. Everyone's option is different. What works best in your scenario. So those are things that try not to get influenced too much by talking to your peers because their scenario is completely different than yours. You may have started the same time, you may have the same kind of salary, but their spouse may be working a lot longer than yours is. They may or may not make as much money as you do. So their scenario is going to be different, and that's going to influence their choice that they're going to pick. All right, so a little note there at the bottom says that there's a formula that takes in place on how the benefit is calculated. So when we get to the example of there, I'll talk about how that formula works and the different aspects of pieces of that formula for you. So we're going to get into the next part of the FRS pension plan, which is called the DROP program. It's short for the Deferred Retirement Option Program. It is only available for the pension participants, and your eligibility is going to be that normal retirement stuff. So you cannot do drop at an early retirement at all. It's going to be meeting that age requirement or years of service, whichever comes first for those plans. So that's 62 or 30 years, the 55 and 6 years, or 25 years for the special risk. But if it's after that 2011, it's going to be at 65 and 33 years. And on the flip side for the special risk, that's 60 and 8 and 30 years of service. With the FRS drop program, there is a time frame in which you are eligible. So that clock would start at that either that 62 or 30 years, whichever comes first. And afterwards, you're going to have an 11-month period in which you can join drop. However, for every month that you defer going into drop, you're going to lose a month of drop. So it's a 5-year program. So if you go ahead and do the 5 years of drop and you end up enrolling 2 months later, so your eligibility, so instead of having 60 months of drop, you only have 58 months of drop. Okay. So there's some exceptions that come with this. The first one is instructional employees. So if you happen to be one of those instructional employees who join the drop program, you don't have a limitation on which you can join. So if you have 35 years and you're 78, you want to join drop for 5 years, you can do so if you want to. But for us people who are classified or instructional, you can, or special risk, once that clock starts, you have that 11-month period to join. If you do not join at that point, then you're not going to be eligible for drop. There's one other exception, and that's for people who happen to attain the 30 years of service prior to age 57. If you have that 30 years before 57, you can defer your drop until 57, and then at that point is when that 11-month clock would start. So if you have 30 years and you're 55, you can wait 2 years before you join drop if you want to, and still enjoy the whole 5 years of drop at that point. All right, next part is the benefit is calculated upon entry. That's the next real common question that people ask, is that how do they figure out the calculation, which we'll get into it. But when you join drop, you are essentially retired in the eyes of the Florida retirement system. So you're no longer going to put 3% of your pay into FRS any longer once you join drop, because you're retired. And then your benefit is actually calculated as of the start date of drop. And that benefit's going to be putting into a savings account per se while you're still working. So it holds it in there for a max of 60 months. And whatever option you pick at the time of joining drop is how the figure is calculated out. And those are the funds that go into the account for you. There is some interest that calculate on the account. It's 1.30 at this point in time. It hasn't changed in quite a number of years now. And then when you exit out drop, FRS says, well, here's what we've collected. Here's 5 years per se, prepaid pension with some interest. They're giving it to you in a lump amount. It's pre-tax. And it's up to you on how you wish to receive it, whether you roll it to another retirement fund to keep it pre-tax, you take it outright and pay a whole bunch of taxes on it, or you leave it into some other into the investment plan with FRS. So you have some options when that comes around on what you want to do. Last part we're going to touch on for this is that there is one other exception about the 60-month part, is that if you're an instructional employee, the state does allow for you to do up to 3 years of extension of drop. It is case by case here at the district that you have to apply for it, and we only do 1 year at a time. And there's certain criteria you have to meet for to get the extension done. So what happens is that at the beginning of every school year, the principals get an email from us here that says, here's our drop participants this year that are eligible to do an extension. If they wish to extend, they have to fill out this paperwork and provide us additional information to make it happen. Then we send it out again, usually around March, when staffing and everything happens to those people that may want to do so. Extensions are for a whole year. You can't do a partial year and everything. And it's to the end of the current year that you're in. So if you happen to be a person that was leaving drop, let's say in November, your extension would take it to June of the year. If you're one of those people that are dropped ending in June, it'd be the following June is what you would go into. So this depends on where things are and where you end up being. There is options on there, but it's all case by case on that part.
Excuse me, please. I just wanted to mention that there's no sign on the door downstairs and the door is locked. So there may have been people who tried to come in and didn't know how to get in. And then secondly, so I was late for that reason, but secondly, I went to the next door workshop and I was in there for a while before I realized I'm in the wrong place. So I asked them where you are.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe if you might consider some signs next
I
time.
thought there, oh, good. I thought you put the sign up there. No. Okay.
There was nobody else.
Okay.
And somebody else on the
Because I
signs.
walked in at 5:30 and
Yeah.
nobody else was waiting. I was standing out there waiting to see.
Yeah, I mean, I was probably, yeah, I was a little bit past 5:30, but
Mhm.
there was no sign on the front door either.
Yeah, they won't let us put signs on those doors, but
Really?
yeah. So
Another lady called the security guy and he came and got her.
Yeah,
in
they
the golf
changed
cart.
things since they locked us all
Yeah.
down.
Gotcha.
So, okay,
Yeah.
thank you, sorry.
Yep.
Mhm.
All right, so moving on to the next part is for the investment plan. So the FRS first started offering the investment plan back in 2002. It was originally designed for people who are the more mobile type of employee or a shorter period of time, because it does have a vesting requirement that's just 1 year on there. So what that would mean is that if you were to work 1 year and then you were to leave, you would be able to take those funds that are yours plus the funds that the district put in, and you'd be able to take them with you to another employer if you wanted to. So, and the benefit was all based on how you invested. So when I talk about those different funds that they have, if you're in a big aggressive type of fund and did very well, you're going to have some great gains. If you're very conservative and took one of the lesser type of funds, then it could be less on there. There is no drop eligibility for the investment plan people because it's not that type of plan. But the retirement eligibility is the same as the other ones on there with the age requirements and years of service. However, this one does allow you to do retirement if you're 59 and a half and have at least 1 year of service that you're vested in there to do the actual retirement from us. Next step on here is going to be about the health insurance subsidy. So the state of Florida offers this to the retirees to help offset the cost of insurance. It is only available to those who have vested under the pension plan, no matter what plan you are in. So you have to have the actual vesting requirement for you to be able to participate in there. And the amount is calculated based on years of service. So they take your years of service, they multiply it by 5, and that's how much you're going to get. The maximum is if you had 30 years of service, which would be $150, but the minimum is $30. It is a lifetime benefit, and it may be able to continue to a surviving spouse. So if you had one of those parts that you're in a pension plan and you took option 3 and you passed away, your spouse will continue on the benefit, plus they'd be able to get this on that as well. So what the requirements are for it is that you have some sort of insurance. It's medicals, dentals, vision, and some kind of accident. There's a list of them that they send out with the form itself of what you need to participate in it. Once you qualify for it, though, once you do not have to keep reapplying for it. So if you happen to change plan, let's say if you take a plan and then you become Medicare eligible and you go on Medicare, you don't have to keep reapplying and say you're eligible for it. Once you're eligible for it the first time, you'll continue to get it for the rest of your life. With the pension plan, it's just something they'll include in the pension check itself. If it's investment plan, they will send you a direct deposit of the funds for there. All right, so moving on here. So now we're going to talk about our sick time, vacation time, and accrued comp time. So we're going to first start with the sick time and what happens with it when retirement happens. So first and foremost is that we only pay out the sick time when you retire. So if you were to leave us anytime other than retirement and you have an accrued amount of sick time, it doesn't go with you. It would stay here at the district. But if you go ahead and retire, it does get paid out. It does pay out to your current rate of pay. However, it does not count towards FRS as earnings at all. So it's not going to help a benefit for FRS by having that stuff paid out. The caveat here is that if you're an administrator, there is a blended rate on how it is calculated out. So what the payroll does is that they're going to take your years in the admin type of role and they're going to blend your rate of pay together. And that's how they're going to figure out how much they're going to pay you for the sick time. There is limitations on it. The maximum payable is 180 days worth. So if you're a 7.5 hour employee, it's 1,350 hours. If you have to be one of those 8 hour employees, it's 1,440 hours. The thing is that people always ask, say, well, if I have time left over, can I just use it all up? And the answer is no. You can't just burn your sick time up. You have to be on some type of approved leave to use your sick time consecutively. However, with your sick time, you can charge sick time to personal time. So if you have a blue slip sheet to fill out and you want to charge sick time to personal, every year we get 48 hours of sick time that we can charge to personal. If we happen to take more than a couple of days off in a row, you put it through that way. It resets every July. So if you're using stuff and you have some time you want to use and it's not going to be for sick purposes, you charge it to personal sick. So again, if you end up wanting to or need to use time and you have been approved for a leave like FMLA or family medical leave, which could be a medical leave, could be a charter school, not charter school, but maternity leave. Those are things in which your sick time would run concurrently. But if you're on a personal leave or you're on a charter school leave, you're not going to be burning up your sick time while you're out doing that stuff. The sick time is just going to stay there at that point. All right, next one, vacation time. For those of us that do have vacation time, most of it's going to be our 12-month type of employees, but there are some people that were 12-month at one point and may have went over and changed into 11 or a 10-month employee that they may have some vacation time still accrued. But the the vacation time does get paid out when you retire or when you join drop. The payout amount does count towards FRS's salary credit. So that's the strategy that comes into play if you're going to be retiring or joining drop, is that if you want to maximize what your benefit might look like, timing of when you do it to have that vacation time help your benefit is one of those things that we would go over when those meetings would happen. But there is maximums on this as well, which is 60 days worth, which for our 7.5-hour days is 450 hours and our 8-hour days is 480 hours. So if you don't have vacation time, it's it's not your fault. It's just that you have more sick time and you have more time off than our 12-month people do. So, but again, the good part about having it when it gets paid is it is sent to FRS. It's reported to them as salary earnings, so it can help your benefit when they're doing a calculation for your retirement. And the last one we're going to look at here is accrued comp time. So accrued comp time was what was back before 2014 was your vacation time accrual. So what happened was that in 2014, it was some changes in the bargaining agreement. They made some maximum, they put those maximums on those type of plans. So for your vacation accrual and your sick time accrual, they put those maximum amount of times you can have on there. So if you end up having 60 days of vacation time at the end of the year, you have 61 days, they're only going to roll over 60 days. You can't accrue more than the maximum for those time frames on there. Now, that's just given when the year actually rolls. So if you join drop and you had 60 days of vacation paid out, and then at the end of another year, you have 10 days left, those 10 days are going to roll. You just can't roll more than 60 days from one year to the next. So with the accrued comp time, you can use it one of a couple of ways. You can have it convert back to vacation time when, say, you're joining drop or retirement, so that you can have that as reported to FRS credit, so you can max out that vacation payout. You can have it contribute to an already established 401k, 403b, or 457 plan that we offer here, as long as it doesn't exceed the contribution limits of the year. And the last one is that you can have it paid out through payroll. It does get taxed that way. It is taxable income, and it gets paid out through payroll for it. So the only one that gives you anything with FRS type of credit is if it was paid out and converted into the vacation time. So depending on the timing and how much time you have and everything like that, is how you can mitigate the tax burden on those, is by putting those into those vacation time if you can, or putting it into one of those voluntary retirement plans. All right, so now we're down to our example of an FRS calculation. Okay, so we have two of them here. To keep things as close to apples as we can, we kind of keep a couple things static here. The first one is the age of the retiree is going to be 62, and the average salary is going to be 35,000. So what happens when the calculation for your FRS happens is that they're going to take your, if you were hired prior to 2011, they're going to take the average of your best 5 years, whenever they occurred. They're going to cherry pick the best years, they're going to add them together and average them out to calculate your benefit. If you're after that 2011, it's going to be the average of your best 8 years at that point. So in this example here, we're looking at the formula, and you see that first number is 1.60. So that's that multiplier number that I was talking about earlier in those previous slides. So this multiplier number is what FRS uses to calculate your benefit. It starts at 160, and that's at age 62 or 30 years of service, and it'll creep up a bit. So at 63, it goes to 163, it goes to 165, and it goes to 168. So at the time of doing the calculation for the benefit, whether it be drop or just regular retirement, it was when that multiplier number is calculated in. So if you join drop at 62, it's that 160. If you're 62 but have 33 years of service, it's going to be that 168. So it just depends on which one of is influencing that formula here. But in this case here, we're looking at 62 and 20 years of service. So the formula is going to be the 1.60 multiplied by that years of service. It equals out to 32. We divide it by 100, which gives us a percentage of 32%. So that 32% is what we take out of that 35,000, and that's going to be your benefit for retirement. So in this case here, it'll come out to $12,250, which is per year. We divide it by 12, and that gives us a monthly pre-tax amount of $1,045.83. Our second example has the same thing in which we're going to have the age 62, but this time we're going to have this person has 30 years of service, but we're still using the same average salary of 35,000 in this case. So our formula is a little bit different. We still have the 1.60 on here, but now we're multiplying it by 30, which equals out to 48, and divide that by 100, it's going to be 48%. So now we're taking 48% of the 35,000 salary, which equals out to 16,800 per year. And then if you divide that by 12, that's going to be your $1,400 per month under the pre-tax for option one. So your takeaway here is just telling you that you see the difference is that how much the years of service would influence what your benefit might look like here. So between 10 years, you see it's about $350 swing in benefit for it. Okay, so basically the more years of service you put in, the better your benefit's going to look out there. Of course, then, you know, once the salary comes into play is there, but saying the big influence is going to be years of service for you. All right, so that's the end of the FRS part of stuff. So now we're going to move into the voluntary retirement plans. So you're one of those people that say, I've joined, I'm in the FRS, I have 3% come out of pay, but I'd like to save some more for retirement. So you can't change that 3% contribution to FRS at all. But if you want to save some more money, the district offers some more retirement plans that you can do so voluntarily on your own to give yourself to close the differences you might need for retirement later on. If you say, well, my pension is not going to be enough for what I need to survive on, and even with Social Security, if I have it, that may not be enough. Here's how I can supplement that income in retirement, and it's going to be one of these types of plans you can use. So we have a 401k, a 403b, and a 457. We have the Roth versions of that 401k and 403b as well. These are available to enroll at any time during the year. You can start participating in those or stop at any time you want during the calendar or during the school year. We have a list of different approved providers because our 401k is currently through Prudential, but our 403b and 457 are through a variety of different providers that the district has here. You can find a list of them in one of two places. You can log into our benefit system. This website here takes you to that. And where you see where your medical and dental and vision and stuff is housed and what you've elected for that. But it also shows some other information for you there. It's got stuff about our voluntary plans. It's got stuff about our wellness stuff that happens here. And it gives an overview of all the different plans that we have as well. On that part for the tab, that would be for the voluntary plan. It does talk about the different plans that are available, the providers for them, plus a link to a quick enroll if you want to go ahead and participate in one of those. The other place you can find it is on the district website. If you start out on the main district website, you go to the Find It Fast button. And then from there, you go to the lower left where it says Employee Corner. There's a little tab there. It'll say Risk Management. When you click on that, it'll take you to another page. And on that page, there's another link that says Retirement. And then from there, you'll see the overview of these as well, along with the list of the different providers and a link to the quick enroll if you want to enroll in one of those plans. So we'll first start with the 401k plan. The 401k plan is a employer-sponsored type of plan. It lets someone go ahead and save additional piece of their paycheck for retirement in a pre-tax status. The taxes wouldn't be paid on this type of plan until they're withdrawn from the account. Currently, our provider is through Prudential. It is actually changing to Empower here in the next few months. So, but the functionality and the funds that are everything in there is the same. It's more of a rebranding type for the company. So you can do enrollment with them a couple of ways. Again, you can go to their website here with that link. You can give them a call at this number here, or you can go to those web pages I tell you about. There's a little link that has a quick enroll. It takes you right to their website that you can go ahead and log into your account and start contributions on it. So these ones are done pre-tax for the 401k. There's no vesting requirement on there. There's no employer match either because the district already puts money into your FRS account. So they don't put additionals into these other voluntary ones. You only get stuff from the district through the FRS side. You can go ahead and roll in some plans outside of it as long as they're a qualified fund. Most of all your funds are going to be qualified unless it falls under more of the SEP type of plans, the self-employed retirement funds. You can do some withdrawals for hardship if you need to, or you can take loans up against them as well. Depending on what you need and how much you need, you'd have to talk with the rep to see what would be probably your best action if you go that route. Our current rep's name is Tony Madeira. His contact information is here, plus his email address, but it's also on those websites as well. They'll have a list of his contact and his email address on there as well. Moving on to our 403B plan. So the 403B plan, these are same concept as 401k. The big difference is that the 401ks are usually for our private companies, and our 403Bs are for our public. But however, public can also, our public can still do the 403B and 401k. We just happen to offer both of them here. Most places you go to, school districts are usually going to offer just a 403B type of plan. But again, we just happen to offer both of them here because we like to. It is an online enrollment for that one as well. We have a third-party administrator that actually takes care of these plans, which kind of they vet our providers and make sure that what they offer and what they're allowed to offer to the employee to enroll in for the 403B type of funds. TSA is the group that does that part. If you guys remember, every year you get this little booklet that comes in the mail from it. It's from TSA that talks about your years of service, what your contribution amounts are going to be, what plans you can participate in. So those come out from TSA. They produce those for us, and we send them out to the sites, to your cost centers and to your mailbox for you. Again, no employer match on this, and the contributions are limited to the combined amount with a 401k. So your combined amount for the maximum is $26,500 for this year. So if you put $20,000 to a 401k, you can do it up to the other $6,500 to a 403b. It's a combined limit for those things. Okay. So if you have both of them, the contribution total is what you can do for that plan for a year. So this one has that you have to be at least 59.5 to make a withdrawal without penalty. Those are IRS guidelines. IRS says that if you're under 59.5, you want to take funds out of a retirement fund, like a 403b or 401k. If you don't meet the normal plan requirement age or years of service, they're going to give you an extra 10% penalty for taxes on there, on top of the regular tax for it. So it's one of those things to keep in mind if you're going to do so, whether you take a difference between going through a withdrawal part or possibly looking for if it's an early withdrawal, or if you have stuff for a 401k, you want to do a loan instead, because you're going to mitigate that extra tax on there. Basically for these, we have like I said, we have a whole bunch of different providers that do the 403b. So it's good to take a look at each one of them, talk to a couple of them, see which ones fit your type of investment strategy, your risk tolerance, as well as what plans they offer. So some of our 403 providers, they offer things like a variable rate annuity, or they offer things like a fixed rate annuity. So your variable rate are the ones that go up and down with the market. That stuff is good, you're doing well. Stuff does bad, you don't do so well. But the fixed rate one is more along a steady line. They give you a minimum kind of interest rate, but they put a cap on them too. So if you say, hey, if the interest, everything went up to 5%, you may have a cap at 3%. So you're not going to get the extra money on there. But on the other way down, you're not going to go down either. So you get the middle of the road, real conservative, that you're going to have some increasing gains that are pretty easy to predict. But you don't get the big things that happen if something should happen, something well should happen during the market. So it's one of those things, if you're going to go that route, talk to a couple of different ones of them, see which one fits best for your type of plan. All right, so with both of those 401ks and 403b, we also have the Roth version of those. The Roth version is, what that means is that it's post-tax. So your contributions, you're going to pay taxes on them, and then you're going to go ahead and put it into the plan. It is an online enrollment. These are still gone through our TSA consultant, and again, post-tax on there, and not any employer match on there. So here's the other part too, is the same thing, is that the contribution limits are still the same for both of those. You got to be 59.5 to do the withdrawal on there, and you have to have the account open for at least 5 years. That's one of the rules of Roth. So what happens is that the Roth is that you're paying your taxes up front. So when you withdraw them later on the road, you're not going to pay extra taxes on any of the gains you made on it. So if you start out with $5,000 in the account, you paid $5,000 on it, and then 10 years later it's worth $10,000, you take it out, you're not going to pay any more tax on that additional gains. You've already paid it on the $5,000 up front. So that's why they have that little 5-year part. They want you to make sure you're keeping it for so long. It also doesn't have a required minimum distribution on it, which our regular traditional ones would have, because you've already paid your tax on the stuff. So the required minimum distribution is for people in those traditional type of plans. Uncle Sam wants his taxes at that point, so they start making you take funds out of the account so they can get your tax on there. But with the Roth, you've already paid your tax on there, so you don't have that requirement for these plans. And moving on to our last one that we have is a 457 plan. So this one is similar on how that functions and everything like that. The enrollment, the third-party administrator. This one is a pre-tax contribution on there, and the same thing without needing the employer match. The big things that are good about the 457 is that it holds a whole separate contribution limit to it. So if you've maxed out that 26,500 in that 401k and 403b, you want to do a whole nother 26,500 through 457, you can do that if you want to, if you're able to. So that's the big plus for those. The other plus is that there's no minimum age requirement to take stuff out of it. So you take it out, you're going to pay your taxes on there. If you're under 59 and a half, you're still going to pay your taxes. You don't have to pay anything additional on there. The good thing about them too is that having that separate contribution limit to there is that if you have stuff in a Roth and you want to put stuff into a traditional, you have the option to do both on those things. So you don't have to do just one or the other, depending on where your tax bracket is, where your earning potential might be from now to the future. Making a strategy with the person you're working with on, does it make sense to start off with a Roth and maybe change to a traditional later on, or vice versa, depending on where you think your tax bracket might be from where you are now to where you are going to be at the retirement. So the big thing too is that research these, talk to some of these providers, ask them questions about where your goals are, where you're going to be headed for stuff. And then the important things you want to talk about is how much is going to cost you and how much will you make? Because with different providers, they're going to give you different fee structures on stuff. Nothing's going to be for free. So if they're saying that they're going to charge you 3% of your money and they're going to tell you they're going to make 6%, you're really only making 3%. So as if someone else may give you 5%, you only take 1%, and you're going to be making 4% on there. So fee structures for each of them, you want to talk to them and see how they're going to look for you, and choosing which one might work best for you. So if, and like I was saying, if you're between that traditional and Roth, is whether or not where you think your tax bracket's going to be from now until retirement. If you think it's going to be higher later on, the Roth might be the better option for you to do. If you think it's going to be lower later on, then possibly the traditional one. But if you want to take both sides of it, you can start off with something now in your lower years, do the Roth part, and then when you get into your higher income years, you may switch over to traditional, so you can try to mitigate the tax on both ends of the spectrum there. All right, so give you a little example here about when investing in between the Roth and a traditional at different stages of life here. So first, our assumption here that you're going to see there at the bottom says this is for someone who retired at age 65. They ended up putting $40 a paycheck into the account, which came out to be about $960 a year. And we're going to give an estimate based on a 7% annual return. So the first one here is that someone that started out at age 49. They happen to cash out, if it was in a Roth, it'd be $148,321. If they were in the traditional one, it'd be $151,030, and that's basically for the pre and post tax type of amounts there. But if you look at the little red block there, or orange block, it's going to tell you that's how much the actual investment is. So at that time frame, they put $34,560 of their money into the plan, and the rest of it's gains. So it's just telling you the longer period of time they were in the plan, they made that much more money on the funds themselves. Now the next one is going to show someone who started out at 40. Same process, they retired at 65, and how much they put in with our base return estimate of 7%. So under the green one for the Roth, it says they would have came out with 62,998, and under the gray one with the traditional, it was 65,740, but still their contributions into it would have been 24,000. So they're still doubling their money by doing that. And then our last one is at age 50, they started doing the same contributions on there. And you see that they're not making as much gains, but they're still making some. So 25,029 under the Roth, 26,701 under traditional. But again, their input in there is 14,400. So they didn't double their money, but they got pretty close to it. So their takeaway here is that it doesn't matter what stage in life you are. It's never too late to start something on here. So if you've gone through a period of time, which, you can't put money away for retire for whatever it may be for expenses that you have, but when you have time to do so, try to do so. It's going to be worth your while later on down the road. It's never a bad idea to put something into a plan to help you make your retirement either sooner, or at least where you need to be when you can retire, because you don't want to be in the part where you have Social Security, you have a pension, and then they go, well, based on this, I still have to work because I don't have enough to take care of what I need to. So this is a way to help mitigate that part. So I put some funds away so that when I do retire, I can actually retire instead of partially retired and still working because I have to, not because I want to. Okay. And that's it. That's the whole presentation for stuff on here. If you guys have any questions for the online part, you can put it in the chat and we'll answer those up. People that are in the audience here, if you want to ask some questions, we'll answer those for you too. Otherwise, we'll just sit here in silence.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you contact the TSA
Uh-huh.
consulting group
Mhm.
and you tell them what your situation is, they can maybe help guide you into whatever is best.
Well, the TSA is the group that manages the different participants. So you wouldn't contact TSA directly.
Oh, okay.
You would participate one. So we have like AIG, we have AXA. AXA is what that. There's another part that goes behind AXA too, and I can't think of it now. But then we have it's a Fidelity, there's Reliastar, there's Voya. So I mean, there's a whole bunch of different ones that are those providers. So the TSA is going to say, well, here's the providers you can use. They'll have them listed on that site. It'll say, here's the different ones. There's Franklin Templeton. You just click on it and it'll take you to their plan, and it'll give you contacts for that rep for us that you can talk with one of them. So I usually say that, pick out 3 of them, try talking to them and see what they are. They're all different. And some of them, I've talked to the majority of them, and they all have different personalities. They all have different investment strategies. So it's good to talk to a bunch of them and see which ones fit you the best. So it's kind of like buying a car. You may like a sports car, but can you fit in it? Does it feel right? Can you see over the steering wheel? Stuff like that. I mean, you don't want to just pick one because everyone else has one. Pick the one that works best for your scenario.
Do I need to apply for the health insurance subsidy is the question, and they're gonna mail that out.
Yes, so you do have to apply for it. So when the retirement would happen with FRS, part of the papers they will send you out once you've applied for retirement is going to be a health insurance subsidy. When we would meet to do the paperwork for it, we're going to tell you how that part works. But yes, they provide that paper to you, and then you fill it out. We tell you how to fill it out if you need help for it, and then we can help you send it out to FRS. So they start to, they would start adding that into either your pension check or just providing it to you if you're an investment plan person.
Is it up there that the 59.5 to withdraw without penalty, the 301 or the 403B?
Mhm.
Do you know what kind of penalty?
10%.
It's 10%.
Yeah. It's just that IRS guideline that their normal retirement age is 59.5. So if you take things out of funds that don't have the exception like the 457 does, then they're going to do that taxes plus 10%. So if you're in the investment plan with FRS, you can take funds out of there after 1 year, but if you're not 59.5, they're going to take another 10% off tax on there. FRS actually does a flat 20% when you take stuff from them on the investment plan, but they'll do an additional 10 if you're under 59.5.
Because I wanted to know more about retirement. Is there not a workshop for information when we want to retire? Because this is my question is I need to understand what drop is. I don't understand it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is
You say within 5 years you have to retire. I really need more explanation on that.
So what drop does is that you're eligible. So if you're eligible to enter drop, let's just say you have the 62 or 30 years, what happens is that the paperwork that happens with it is that you're now retired. So FRS says we're going to calculate your retirement benefit when you start drop. And then during that time you are in drop, you're still working. And FRS is taking that money and they're putting it into a drop account. And then after that, let's say that 5-year period or whatever time frame you're in drop, when you leave, they say, hey, you know what? Here's 5 years of the pension that we've been saving for you while you're working. They give that to you in a lump amount. So the thought behind drop is that they're giving you what I call a parting gift. for people who are not able to do, let's say, a 401k or 403b, to save for that and say, we're going to give you a lump amount of money that you can do with it what you want. You can reinvest it, you can use it to pay off debt, you can do whatever you want with it, and then they'll start paying you the pension to you directly. So it's almost like it's a savings account they're doing for you while you're working.
I understand. So is that something that's like you really, as much as beneficial that you should do?
There's very few downsides to not doing the drop. Years of service is one of them. Usually once you have about, between 17, 18 years of service, that's when you gotta look and see, does drop make sense for me to do or not? The other is gonna be salary. So let's just say that your salary right now is at $40,000, but next year I'm gonna be an administrator and I'm gonna make $60,000. So doing drop at this point probably wouldn't make sense because you're missing out on all those higher years of salary to calculate into your benefit. So it's not for everybody, but every way we look at it and see what's the pros and cons, and then from there, knowing what I could have had if I just retired or what I'm going to have if I join drop, and we compare the two and give you an information. So you go, all right, well, it makes sense for me to do drop or not.
So your 3% that you get for your retirement. It's before the years. I'm like, say you get 5 years of that lump sum, and your retirement benefits is before those 5 years is what you're gonna get a month then. They're not gonna include that last 5 years that you.
Correct. So the years that you're participating in drop are not part of the calculation for your retirement. Right.
And then you said get the average of your last 5 years of pay for your retirement.
Best 5 years.
The best 5 years
Mhm.
of your pay.
Mhm.
Would that be your last 5 years?
Not
Not
always.
necessarily.
Well, here's the thing, is that so back in 2014, I think, is when we changed how we pay. We used to pay 5 checks at the end of the year, and then now we pay throughout the summer. So the first year they did that, those summer checks were actually put on the next year's fiscal year. So you're going to have 1 year that's going to show is bigger than the other one, instead of it being like that consistent, just that raise. So that's going to be one of your better years for people, because it didn't make sense to change it for those folks. So if you look at years of service, you'll see that part. Or again, let's say 1 year you did summer school and next year you didn't. Summer school is FRS credit stuff. So that year would be one of your better years. It's not necessarily your last one. It's going to be wherever they are, they cherry pick the best ones.
Your 5 highest paid years.
Yep. Mhm.
average.
Yep. So when we go over the calculation everything, I would show you those best years on your years of service, so you can see how the calculation comes out.
I just have a couple more. After you retire, I heard you can't sub for a year. Is that true?
As of right now, the FRS requires you to wait 1 year before you return to work for an FRS employer. So that includes subbing or working. Now you can volunteer if you want to, but you can't volunteer for a normally paid position. So for the last 3 or 4 years, they've been trying to put it through legislation to change that, but they can't seem to pass it. So
That's terrible.
yeah. So they've tried it on a couple of things. Last one actually wasn't teacher, it was actually special risk people that they've tried to do. The only thing they've come across with special risk is if you're an SRO and you came back and do 6 months. But that's the only thing they've changed so far. Actually, no, sorry. One other thing was for judges, if they're on a trial, they could continue on until the trial was over. But otherwise, they have not changed the 1 year limitation. They do, it's a penalty. So within the first 6 months, they'll cancel the retirement, make you pay any funds you've gotten from them back. Months 7 through 12, they suspend the pension payments until the 1 year is up. So after the 1 year, you can return if you want to work, but you don't accrue a new pension or anything. Now, if you were looking at subbing, that's for the school district. So if you want to sub at Imagine, you want to sub at Cardinal Mooney, they're not part of FRS. You can sub them day one if you want to, or work for them day one. That's not part of the requested.
You go work at like a private
Yep.
school.
As long as they're not part of FRS, there's very few. So like SMA is part of FRS, and there's one in Venice, and I keep forgetting what the name of it is, but they're part of FRS too. But most of our charter schools are not. So you can go ahead and work for them right away if you want to.
So private or parochial school or
Mhm.
private university.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, if like Florida Virtual School is not part of FRS. I think they were trying to, but I don't think they got it done yet. But in some of the universities, there are some of them that are part of FRS and some of them are not. So it just depends on where. So it's one of those things that if you were going to think about doing that stuff, that's going to be one of your first questions. Are you guys part of FRS or not? And if they don't know, probably not, but you can always call FRS and say, hey, I look at this potential employer. Are they part? And they'd be able to tell you yes or no. They actually have a little list of them that they put out, which we have a copy of, but it's not updated very often. So I can't say how accurate it's going to be. So like if you wanted to work for the city of Sarasota, they're not part of FRS, but Sarasota County government is. So you couldn't do, or the city of Northport is, but the city of Venice is not. So I mean, it just depends on where you're going is which ones participate in the program or not.
Well, that's unfortunate because when I retire, I'd like to sub, and I know that they have a huge demand for subs.
Mhm.
And I don't want to have to wait a year. What did you say if you do it in spite of the fact that you shouldn't, then what happens?
Usually the biggest penalty is going to be within the first 6 months. So that's from the effective retirement date. What happens after the 6 months is that they're just going to stop paying you. So say if you're getting $1,200 a month from them, that remaining of that for that year, they're not going to pay that $1,200 to you. So if you're going to sub and supplement that, then it's kind of a wash, but you're still giving up that time by doing it. Now, every year it's year to year. So every year they come up and maybe by the time you guys retire, they fix it. But it's as it sits right now, that's where it's at.
If you do it during the first 6 months,
They cancel the retirement and you can pay everything back.
oh
So
my God.
the downside is that you've already retired from us, so you don't get a job back. You're just retired and you have no pension now. You have to reapply for it at a different date then.
But it's just subbing like 2 days a week instead of doing full time.
Yeah, but the thing, the FRS is not just teachers though. The FRS is fire departments, it's county government. So it's the same requirement for all of them. That they can't come in and come back to work.
Even a classified person? too?
Mhm. Yep.
Not just teachers?
Yep.
Gee,
Mhm.
that blows my plan right out the window.
Well, like I said,
That person-
you never know what they'll change in the legislation, so it may change at some point. Like I said, they've tried, and for me, I've read it and I looked at like, this looks good, except for they just missed a couple of words. If they would have fixed that, it would have been great. And I've emailed them. I emailed them saying, hey, this looks great. Change this word and you're good to go. But they never did it. So email your Congress people, whatever you, because they're all putting those legislations in there. So
Okay, if you do it during the first 6 months, I have to, you talk faster than I can absorb because I have a full brain. If you do it during the first 6 months, they cancel your retirement. If you do it from months 7 to 12, they stop.
Suspend
paying-
it, yeah.
Suspend, pay it back.
the 6 month one, you pay it back. So at retirement though, there's a disclosure I give you that FRS has that has a little chart on there and tells you. So, and so basically like if you retired and 4 months later you collected $4,000, you return to work, FRS says, well, you got to pay us back that $4,000. And then your retirement is null at that point. So afterwards, if you want to retire, you reapply again at that point. That's how it worked. It's not so bad for retirement, but if you're a drop person, you've gotten 100,000 drop, you got to pay all that money back to them and hopefully they use it. We don't have it happen very often. I've seen it twice that someone actually either had to pay something back or they got the payment suspended. But it's, you know, there's a strategy behind it too, that they did it like, oh, I have 2 more months for my 1 year, but they want me to start. They pretty much foregone that and maybe they worked it on their contract to get extra money. I don't know. So
Next question is, if say I would go teach in another county and I'm gonna make a much less salary than I do at Sarasota County. You said it's your 5 best years.
Yep.
It would be my 5 best years in Sarasota County.
yep, for better or worse. Yep.
Go teach somewhere else.
Mhm. But it's same thing here. We have people that join the drop and then let's say they're a bus driver and they become a bus aide, or they're a teacher, they become a cafeteria aide. Their stuff's already calculated as of that time frame. So for better or worse, that's not affecting anything. Same thing if you didn't retire yet. Those years are just going to be service time. The salary credit comes in, but it's not going to influence the average now because it's already it's under the 5 years. It's not one of those better years, so they're not going to count it in the average. But in terms of you saying whether you have 20 years or 25 years, you're still going to have those 5 years that's 25. But if those years aren't one of the better ones, they're not going to count in that calculation of the average, though. So basically, I mean, if you were gonna do like a meeting with one of us and talk, it'd be the same conversation, but you'd have numbers to look at too. So I mean, if you're in that time frame that you're saying, when should I talk to someone about joining something? It's usually if you're within that first, if you're looking at drop or retirement, 90 days is that period. Just because of how the time works to, one, get a meeting scheduled and produce documents and to get estimates correct. So if you do something, say, hey, I'm going to retire in 3 years, there's no sense in doing a benefit because we don't know if you're going to get a raise. You don't know if you're going to be the same job. You may take a leave of absence. So we can't foreshadow or predict those things because things may change. So that's why we do that 90-day period to give you the most accurate number we can at that point. Now, if we're doing drop, of course, we're always going to predict that's a drop because you can do that because it's going to be set. It's not going to have any influences after that. So.
I just can't believe that they won't let you sub. You know, a lot of people want to sub for 2 or 3 days a week. They just don't want to work 5 days a week anymore.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Yep. That's the last one they had on there for the last legislation was particular just for subbing. It says you can be reemployed if you were just a sub, and it died in committee. It didn't go anywhere. So when they start the next legislation thing, someone else will come up with it. But I don't know what their reasoning is or why they're not doing it or not. It doesn't make any sense to me either, but they just can't, the best and brightest can't seem to agree apparently. So, but I would say that's what you can do. I mean, if you want to reach out to a congressperson or man, whatever, they're the ones that put these things out there on there. The one that was 2 years ago was, I picture his face, but I can't picture his name. There was a guy and there was a lady that they're on both sides of it. What was that lady? She was the attorney. Margaret Good. She put one out there, and that one didn't work. And the other one was he's the Gruden. He put it out there too. They both put it the same year. It basically said the same thing, and neither one of them went anywhere.
And
Crazy.
one is a Democrat and the other one's a
Yeah,
Republican.
it was well, one was through the House, one was through the Senate, and neither one of them went. So it's just crazy. It's like it was the same thing. Why I really thought it was going to happen. They both did it, both sides, and neither one of them went. It's crazy. So I don't know what their reasoning is behind it, but somewhere they think they can't seem to agree to what it's going to do. But
You would think they want people who have experience already to come back and do it, you know, and some more.
yeah,
Okay.
yep.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks for attending. Appreciate it. And like I said, if you guys have any other questions, up front there is where my card is. You can send me an email, give me a phone call. Email is easier for me. But I get back to you as soon as I can on stuff. So
Thank you for doing that.
All right, great.
Appreciate it, Carol.
thank you. All right. And if there's no one else that is putting a question in through the chat, we're going to go ahead and end it out here. But if any of you guys that are on the chat that do want to have the copy of the PowerPoint, you can send the email either to myself or to the risk management email that was on here, and we'll get you one out through the Pony. Thanks again, guys. Have a great night.